Maxwell. Welcome back to my channel. This is Max Reacts. Today we're watching a video about Comedy Hype that says why Neo Soul ended. Let's see what they have to say.
The early to mid 90s ushered in a new wave of artists that pushed the boundaries of black music until they broke. They defied pop culture with an indifference to what the streets wanted in favor to what the soul wanted. Artists like Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, and Maxwell are credited with pioneering the genre known today as Neo Soul. The unique spin on R&B swept the radio and became a household fixture by the early 2000s. But as groundbreaking as it was, its commercial appeal was short-lived. Neo Soul artists experienced a whirlwind success, and within a decade, for various reasons, many of them went on hiatus. A few to never make another album again. How does a class of artists who gave us legendary hits like Nothing Even Matters by Lauryn Hill just vanish? Some say the genre fell off as quickly as it blew up. Others would say it just took a new form. But what's for certain is that the Neo Soul that we knew in 1995 is no more. Here's why Neo Soul disappeared. D'Angelo's 1995 Brown Sugar album is credited as one of the first Neo Soul albums ever. That could be because his manager at the time, Kedar Masonberg, was the one who coined the term. Although many of the artists who gave Neo Soul its international impact rejected the label itself, Masonberg felt it was necessary to give this new alternative R&B a name. He told Billboard magazine in 2002, "They don't want this music to be looked at as a genre, because when you classify music, it becomes a fad, which tends to go away. But soul music is soul music. Right. That's nothing really new under the sun. But in terms of marketing today, there's a need to categorize music for consumers so they know what they're getting. So, for lack of a different term, I coined Neo Soul."
And things feel like it's jogging in place. It makes it so easy for something to come in and like, boom, kicking the door, waving the 4-4. And that's what Neo Soul did at that time. It literally kicked in the door, waved the 4-4. This is the new standard of how really earthy, honest, jazzy, R&B, / a little bit of hip hop, so Q-Tip can fall into that. It was definitely a departure from, I worked with Teddy like back in the day. I toured with Blackstreet, so it was definitely a departure from New Jack City, New Jack Swing. Yeah, so it was something new. It was slower, it was tough, but it was honest and dope.
But for the mainstream listeners in the 90s, Neo Soul was a brand new. The genre infused contemporary R&B with elements of jazz, funk, hip-hop, gospel, and of course soul. Artists like Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, and Common came on the scene sporting knit hats, head wraps, and afros in stark contrast to the shiny suits and blinged out hip huggers of popular urban culture at the time. Neo Soul lyrics had more of a conscious touch, as stated by Dimitri Erlich for Vibe magazine in 2002. The content had a deeply personal approach to love and politics. Neo Soul in the 90s made you either want to fight the power or take a long walk around the park after dark with your love. Yet, it was still connected to the streets. Neo Soul just felt real. There was even a difference sonically, featuring less of a synthesized sounds of R&B in favor of more live instrumentation. You could clearly hear the genre's influences of Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Chaka Khan, the list goes on. They were inspired by the greats and intended to continue their legacy of making music for the soul. When asked what components make up a Neo Soul artist, jazz great Mike Phillips would say,
harmonically, melodically, I think the progressions are a little bit more open and more skewed towards jazz. Message-wise, honesty, even if it comes by way of vulnerability. No matter how you look at it, the umbilical cord cannot be cut off from the culture.
Literally just raw and uncut. I think that's why as a kid growing up I listened to everything, but my parents were like pioneers for that in our household, or catalysts I would say, in that they introduced us to jazz, they introduced us to rock, they introduced us to R&B, soul, in every format. So Neo Soul was one of those things that I drew more so to as a kid, from Erykah Badu to Maxwell to D'Angelo. Common is one of my favorite rappers outside of, the mainstream, the bigger ones that we all talk about. So this was really interesting as a kid, just hearing that true, just raw and uncut. Even when I wasn't supposed to listen to it and I kind of got caught listening to it, it still kind of shaped and molded my interest in music, from progressive R&B that I listen to now, or maybe alt R&B that's not maybe the most mainstream, but I also listen to everything else, so I do love what we hear on the radio as well. But I hate it as a kid or even as an adult, the artists that I listen to who fall into this genre that just don't get played like they should anymore.
Masonberg at the time was the former Motown Records president, who would go on to sign the legendary Erykah Badu to her first major deal with Universal Records under his Kedar Entertainment imprint. Badu's debut album, Baduism, released in 1997, stamped the incense-burning Dallas native as the first lady of neo-soul. As one of the biggest names of the genre, she has never shied away from her indifference towards the neo-soul label. Like in 2008, she told Today, "What's funny about neo-soul is that I don't even know what it is. I know what the two words mean, but the term was thrust upon myself and D'Angelo by Kedar Masonberg. He has a talent for spotting underground music that he feels is the next wave. I guess that's what neo-soul is to Kedar, a new wave of soul.
That was very much underground, yeah.
I accept it, but I don't want to be called the queen of it or anything, because I'm going to change and then everybody's going to be disappointed.
Smart.
I feel like the term is brilliant, but it's not me. It's one part of me. I don't feel like I created it." During a public lecture for Red Bull Music Academy
Before he goes on with that, and I think that's something we also see in music nowadays, that people, I don't understand this whole theory of like people are either being inconsistent or they're doing too much or maybe they're not doing enough. Like everybody has the ability to experiment with sound and do things differently. So if someone comes in and they're very much all R&B, neo soul, whatever, and then they go and do a pop album or something like that, that's just them experimenting with using different genres. I love that she said in an interview, like, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna do something different. And when other artists say that nowadays, y'all hear it, but y'all don't hear it. And then when they do it, they're being inconsistent. But then if they put the same piece of work out, the same sound, the same feel, the same look, the same vibe for 5 or 6 albums, they'll never change it up. They just boring, they lame. I hate to hear like that discourse, but I love that she said that.
14, Badu's former label mate D'Angelo was asked how he felt about his music being classified as neo-soul, and the singer pled the fifth.
Oop.
"I don't want to disassociate, and I respect it for what it is. But anytime you put a name on something, you put it in a box.
That part.
I never claimed I do neo-soul. When I first came out, I said, I do black music.
I like that.
Many neo-soul artists felt that the label was a trap that stiffed their creativity, because if they are labeled as neo-soul artists, they'd never be able to create anything that isn't deemed neo-soul.
Exactly.
The ambivalence of neo-soul artists towards the newfound classification of their sound did not diminish the stardom that followed in the years to come. By the year 2000, neo-soul had reached its peak and was filled with chart-topping, record-breaking artists. In 1998, then a member of the rap group Fugees, Lauryn Hill, released her first and only solo studio album, the critically acclaimed The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, earning her 5 Grammy Awards amongst a host of other accolades. The album was a turning point for neo-soul. By the year 2000, the genre had reached a commercial breakthrough. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing A Long Walk by Jill Scott,
right,
or Love by Musiq Soulchild.
Yes.
The same year, 3 albums produced by the collective Soulquarians continued to solidify neo-soul's position in music. D'Angelo's Voodoo, Common's Like Water for Chocolate, and Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun pushed the needle for creativity in black music and were mostly met with widespread acclaim. But the more the artists began to experiment with their sound, the more their fears of being boxed in came to be.
Oof.
For Erykah Badu, Mama's Gun was nothing like her debut, and although it is credited as one of the singer's best albums, the sales didn't quite reflect the praise. In an interview with the South African Sunday Times, she revealed, "I worked really hard on Mama's Gun. I really felt I had something to prove, and when it came out, I was very pleased with my work. But the commercial success in the United States was not as great as I expected. And I was down for a little bit and doubted its power.
It's a great album.
But when I started to tour again and saw all the people show up who knew the words, it was confirmation that the work is not always for commercial success. it's also for spiritual upliftment.
Love it.
Neo-soul artists were always about the art first. The success and fame that came along with it, presenting their precious work to the world, was just a bonus. But in the music business, it's all about the numbers. Unfortunately, the need for artists who create for the love to be able to experiment their sound and do what feels right for them doesn't always equal record sales. From the R&B group Jagged Edge, Brian Casey seemed to prophesize neo-soul's fate to Vibe magazine. In a 2002 interview, he said, "I appreciate a lot of those neo-soul artists, but they lost sight of making a hit record. And if you don't make hit records, people don't hear your music." From the time of neo-soul's inception to the height of its popularity, many of its biggest stars had already experimented repeated delays in releases or disappearances from the scene altogether. Common would further explain the notion for Spin magazine in 2008. "These artists won't allow anything they believe is a part to be out there. I can hear stuff D'Angelo did messing around in the studio and think it's incredible. But if he doesn't feel it, fans aren't going to hear it."
Yep.
Same thing for Lauren or Erica. After her second album, Badu found herself with a case of writer's block and was relatively quiet aside from her Frustrated Artist tour until 2003. By the time her colleague Lauryn Hill had effectively vanished from the public eye, her 2002 live MTV Unplugged number 2.0 album felt like a diary reading, revealing her frustration with fame and creating whispers of the singer's unstable emotional well-being. It would be one of her last recorded offerings as a solo entertainer. She told Essence in 2009, "I had to step away when I realized that for the sake of the machine, I was being way too compromised." This unique Afrocentric class of singers and songwriters from the 90s were thrust into the spotlight quickly, and they had it all. But many of them realized it came at a cost that they weren't willing to pay.
Yep.
Their creativity and freedom of expression felt limited with fame, and many of them were conflicted about mainstream success and a public sudden infatuation. These factors, along with other reasons like the artist's personal struggles and record label conflicts, led to less music from the artists who represented the original neo-soul group. Later in the 2000s, we were introduced to more artists who held on to the foundation of neo-soul like Heather Headley, Anthony Hamilton, and Raheem DeVaughn. Music classified as neo-soul hasn't stopped being released
At all.
and a few of the originals have maintained relevance, but the genre as we knew it then has somewhat faded into oblivion.
Things have its time, and its time has a lot to do with people in general. So, Fight the Power can get some legs right now because of everything that's been happening, that still happens. But there's some music that don't get the legs because of where we are socially. So if we want to consider ourselves in a social decline, why would musically be consumed commercially that shows honesty and vulnerability and just good feeling? If we're literally in the social decline, which means if we're in a social decline, then anything that gets absorbed commercially is a part of that decline. And if that music at that time was vibrating high, why would we expect it to be popular now?
Right.
Ironically, the biggest neo-soul artists resented being labeled as neo-soul.
You feel that?
Was the genre doomed from the start? Was classifying the free-spirited group of creatives the beginning of the end? Many fans and critics will argue that neo-soul hasn't really left us, but it has just taken on a new form.
Which is what I was going to
The
say.
latter part of the 2010s gave us a new generation of R&B artists who have taken influence from those who originated New Soul. And these days, thanks to more digital marketing, it doesn't really matter what you call it. SZA, Lucky Day, Her, Summer Walker, and Ari Lennox are just a few that carry the torch for the Black left of center artists who create from the soul.
Okay.
Black art is ever evolving, and that's what makes it great. We may no longer have neo-soul, the marketing tool, but soul music will be here forever.
Okay. All right. Not much I can add to that. I was going to make the same point that, faded, disappeared. I don't know if I would agree with that. More so, I would say that it's just evolved and it's taken on a new form. and more people are taking like just the roots and the elements of what was, you know, so great and so popular back then, and just turn it into something a little bit more left of center in today's world, in today's market, which I think is still incredible. But you don't ever get you get close to the original, but you just don't get the original back. But I also love the points made about like people being boxed in when it comes to genres. I love, y'all know, if y'all watch anything music related on this channel, y'all know I love me some Tinashe, I love me some Dawn Richard. And when I think about them, I think about a fusion of genres. They're not just one box. And for Dawn, she calls herself the genre, and I love that to no end. I wish more people would adopt that mindset and just release music that they feel great about, instead of having to, you know, do the thing for the numbers. I know if they sign, they got to do that, but the independent artists are killing it now, and they can release what they want to release. And I would love to see more people just adopt, hey, let me just experiment and do what the fuck I want to do without this machine, without this box, without anything, you know, holding me back. So this was a good deep dive. I just wanted to watch something a little bit different. I've been watching some music content more lately. And yeah, let me know what you thought about this below. Comment, like, subscribe. Until next time, peace.